Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank first Jack Cassell and family for continuing to support this legacy of recognizing some of the best student athletes to ever step foot on this American University campus. It is an honor to be here this evening and introduce one of the newest members of the Pop Cassell Hall of Fame. Ethan Bassett and I go way back to age group swimming. When we were competing on rival teams, we both grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. Little did we know that years later, we would be competing on the same team and pushing each other to be our best. So many memories surround our time together at AU, and I would like to bring back some of those memories by mentioning just a few. McDowell Hall. Yeah. I remember a time when Ethan's roommate, Dewan, played a really good April Fool's trick on him, but I will not go into the details on that. TDR, also known as the dining room. I don't know if that still maintains the same name, but that's what we called it back then. Taking advantage of the unlimited meal plans that we had, consuming endless amounts of food, and sitting there for what seemed like hours just talking and laughing with our teammates. Study hall at the library. Ethan came in the year after me, and the policy at the time was it was mandatory your first semester. And then if you had above a certain GPA, you didn't have to go back. After that first semester that Ethan was here, I never saw him again. Trips to Spain. Between Christmas and New Year's, the swimming and diving team would take, well, the divers wouldn't go, but swimmers would go over to Spain for this meet. It was basically a one-day competition, but we would get to enjoy some of the cultural aspects of Spain and had some great memories there. Training trips. Two come to mind. First, Miami, having to battle through 12 400 IMs. For those of you that are not a swimmer, it's an extremely difficult challenge. But we battled through it. Next, St. Croix, an amazing training trip, an amazing experience. We were both sick during that training trip, battled through 10 days of training on a beautiful island. Conference champions, George Mason University, February 2001. The final conference championship in the CAA. We were transitioning to the Patriot League so we could participate at the conference meet, but we couldn't score any points. Coach Mark Davin kept score of the meet. 3 days of competition. Everyone knew after the last relay finished that we had won the meet. So the JMU men were jumping in on one end of the pool as the default champions, while the AU men and the women joined in too were jumping in at the other end as the real champions. The athletic department recognized us the next year as conference champions and presented us with a banner and championship rings. After all the accomplishments and accolades built up throughout our time together as Eagles, our friendship did not end with our time at American. Ethan was the best man at my wedding, and I wasn't his. This is what American has done for us. It has brought us together and formed a bond that will last a lifetime. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to present my teammate and brother from another mother, Ethan Bassett, as the next member of the Pop Cassell Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Mark. I have a speech written out, but I'm going to call a little bit of audible. It wasn't really real until coming into this room and seeing on everyone's chair is pictures of 4 people, including me, and then it sort of hit me, which is a little bit late. I think Dave Beersworth called me about 17 times before we finally connected, and so he's probably happy I'm here. And I picked up JM's call, and the first call is just, I don't know. I recently got into Ironmans, which is in my speech, but I learned I don't cry at the finish line. I cry somewhere in the middle because I know I'm going to finish. So I think I teared up a little bit earlier today, so I should be good through this. No, but walking in, it's been several years since I've been into the Bender Arena, and it's changed. But especially where the Hall of Fame is, where the pictures are. It used to be pictures as you walk into the basketball arena, and great big portraits on the wall. And one of them was a swimmer I particularly knew because I would watch him swim. Sergio Lopez, he was a Spanish Olympian, but he swam 200 breaststroke, which is what I swam. And I swam. I grew up here, and so I swam at AU from the age of probably 12 or 13 on a club team. And so I'd see that picture day after day, and then see Sergio in the pool, and it was a big motivator and mentor, and now to be on that same wall is just it's unreal. For much of my life, it was hard to realize life without swimming, and now, give or take 25 years later, it's kind of hard to remember this life, that I had as a student athlete. It brings me back. So many of you did not bring your children, and now I see why. But my son Clark, who many of you have met or run into tonight, literally run into, it brings me back when he comes. I get home from work, and he's had his swim lesson for the day, and I smell chlorine in his head, and that smell of chlorine really brings me back, because that was 20 years of my life. My wife doesn't like the story, but I didn't wear deodorant until I was about 26, 27 years old, because I just smelled like chlorine. I thought deodorant was more of just like cologne. So I was here in 2004. Back in 1998 was when I graduated from high school. I was a senior, faced with the prospect of financially paying for college, for getting myself through school. I had been a nationally ranked age grouper, so at the age of 10, top in the country, and then through my age group years or teenage years, kind of slipped back and wasn't as I was kind of became an average sort of swimmer. And that year, so maybe it was 97, 98, my coach at the time, Rick Curl, suggested or offered, why don't you take a year off and get to a point where you can pay for, where swimming can pay for college, which was obviously a risk, but I loved the idea. My parents, maybe a little, my mom's here tonight, but maybe a little skeptical at first. Became fully supportive, and that then the rest is history. And they through those, so I ended up taking 2 years off, and my parents continued to drive me to each and every practice, because I didn't get my license till I was 18. So after 2 years, I made it back to the national age group ranking. I made nationals, I made Olympic trials. And then Mark Davin, the then head coach of AU, gave me the opportunity to come here. Reintroduced with the responsibilities of school, Mark Liscinsky mentioned that I was in the library that first year. It was actually the first semester, but it was actually the first year. I was threatened. I threatened my own with my GPA, my own scholarship, right? So it was dependent on me doing well, and so I started meeting with with an academic counselor. And it happened to be a former AU diver, Meredith Bassett. And I met with her literally weekly for the next 3 years. And I never dropped below a 3.9 after that. We trained an insane amount. We trained an insane amount. And in the moment, you have no idea. You're surrounded by other lunatics, so you really have no idea. I asked ChatGPT, what percent of the US population is currently a Division I NCAA athlete? And it turns out it's 0.06% of the population. That's your bubble. That, as a student athlete, that's who you know. And so you're not outside that bubble. You don't know what you're doing. I was a better swimmer than 99.94% of the population in the US, but to me, it was, am I better to who's next to me? I have recent perspective, again, of training for an Ironman. So I started that 4 years ago, and I have just got to find time by myself, train in my basement. And it's difficult to even find 6 to 8 hours a week, with the kids and work. Whereas, but over those 2 years, or 4 years, the past 4 years, I ended up this past October competing in Kona, which is the sort of Ironman World Championships. I mentioned my wife. She's over there. She would be happy to tell you that it was her support that got me through that. So, I would tell you that I'd put the kids to bed, but really, as I read them, I would fall asleep mostly around 7:30, and then she would take care of the rest. All right. So, at AU, with Ironman being, 6 to 10 hours a week, and I found that impossible. AU was 25 plus hours a week. I know on paper it was supposed to be under 20, but we all know it's more than that. And it's 25, Ironman is 8 hours a week, and you do a 12-hour race at the end. AU was 25, 30 hours a week, and it was 2 minutes, hopefully under 2 minutes. And some weeks we eclipsed 6, so I only lived in yards. That was it, yards and meters. And so when I think about just what I do now, and it was 60, some weeks, 1 week we would put 60 miles into the pool. And I struggled to hit 25 miles of running over the past couple of years. And I can only guess, but a rough calculation suggests I rotated my arms about 50,000 times a week. And that's 2.5 million times of arm rotations a year. So with her focus on technique, Beth Baker is single-handedly responsible for preventing shoulder surgery in decades of AU swimmers. You get through this with friends. So friends, teammates, friends who are all going through the same trauma, because it practices our trauma. And you're driven by being the best you can be. You're driven by working harder than anyone else, by beating the person in the lane next to you. You put in the work. It's not necessarily the joy and happiness of jumping into a cold pool at 5 a.m., but teammates quickly become family who only support your goals. And as Mark said, we literally became brothers. And I can name a few more of who are supportive. So, for example, Leanne Tay here suggested to Mark Devon, the coach, that no one else, do 5 2000s in a workout, and that was on one of our training trips, and so he took her up on it, and that's what I did in a lane by myself, and finished long after everyone else. Jessica Lidstrom, who's also here, countless times helped me because we had the same major, biochemistry, organic chemistry, you name it, my master's thesis, all the while teaching me Swedish phrases like, I farted. which I still remember. Mark Liscinsky, who you met, is on multiple occasions would challenge me to a race the length of the pool without our suit on. That's the end of my. That's in. So I'm extremely proud, extremely grateful for this recognition. I loved my time at AU. I was always encouraged, motivated, supported to work my hardest, achieve my potential. My picture might be on that wall, but it could just as easily be my coaches, Rick, Mark, Meredith, Beth, my parents, and my teammates. Thank you.